When my brother was little, he acted like he had angels talking to him every second. One day, my mom overheard him say, "I can't kill him. He's my only dad." My folks' farm surrounds a cemetery, and my dad and my niece were walking down there. My niece, 4, looks up and says, "What's that boy doing in that tree?" There was no boy, but she insisted there was and could describe him. My son from the age of 3 always tells me about the creepy man who lives in my mom and dad's bedroom. He brings it up after he visits them. I made the mistake once of asking him what he looks like. My son said, "Oh, he doesn't have a face." A parent of one of my students told us in a meeting that she was concerned because her son, 7 years old, talked about an invisible ghost who would talk to him and play with him in his room. He said the ghost was called the Captain and was an old white guy with a beard. The kid would tell his mom that the Captain told him when he grows up his job would be to kill people, and the Captain would tell him who needed to be killed. The kid would cry and say he doesn't want to kill when he grows up. But the Captain tells him he doesn't have a choice, and he'll get used to killing after a while. In high school, one of my best friends had a little sister who was 5 or 6 years old. One day, we stopped by his place completely high because we needed to get magic cards. While waiting for him to come downstairs, his sister came up to me and said, "Icky told me to ask you if you know when you're going to die." I laughed nervously. Morbid question, right? But I knew all about Icky, her imaginary friend. I even helped her draw a picture of him once. So I played along and said, "No, of course not. No one knows that. Hopefully when I'm very old." The girl shook her head sadly and said, "No, Icky wants me to tell you it'll be tonight." And with that, she just walked away. When my niece was about 4, she had an imaginary friend, which I don't remember the name of. She would blame things she did on this imaginary friend, but also talked about how the friend would watch Scooby-Doo with her. One day, I thought, why don't I find out more about this friend? So I asked her to tell me about her friend. And she said, "She's a she, and she's dead." And I said, "Okay, does she have a job?" And she said, "She does what my daddy does," which is that her imaginary friend was a cop. Okay, so then I said, "Where's your imaginary friend a policewoman at?" And she said, "Right next to where my daddy's a policeman." And I said, "Okay." But then she said, "I met her when I was in my mommy's belly. She touched it when I was inside." A few months before my niece was born, my cousin Tracy had died. She was hit by a train. She loved watching Scooby-Doo and had tons of memorabilia. She was also a cop. She was a cop in the town that is right next to the one my brother-in-law is a cop in. My niece's imaginary friend was my dead cousin. There's no other way she could have known all of that at the age of 4. When my daughter was 3, she had an imaginary friend named Kelly who lived in her closet. Kelly sat in a little rocking chair while she slept, played with her, etc. Typical imaginary friend shit. Anyway, fast forward 2 years later. The wife and I were watching the new Amityville, the one with Ryan Reynolds, and our daughter walks out right when the dead girl goes all black-eyed. Far from being disturbed, she said, "That looks like Kelly." "Kelly who?" we say. "You know, the dead girl that lives in my closet." When my younger brother was around 4, he had an imaginary friend named Victoria Meadowbrook. He told us that she was the prettiest girl ever, and she floated above his bed at night. When my older daughter was 2 or 3, she used to have a couple of imaginary friends, Dodo and Dee Dee. They were typical imaginary friends. She would talk to them and play with them and tell me about their lives. Then, one day, when she was about 3, she was talking on her play phone when I walked into the room. She hung up her phone and said to me, with a completely flat voice and deadpan expression, "The evil is coming." I was 16 and babysitting a friend of the family's 6-year-old. He'd been in bed a couple hours, and I just peeked in to check on him. He wasn't in bed, and when I opened the door wider, I saw he was standing in the corner, facing the wall. Creepiest fucking thing ever. I asked him what he was doing, and all he did was turn around, smile, and put his finger to his lips as if to say, "Shh." I asked him again what he was doing, and all he says is, "Leave us. It is the punishment."